Welcome back to another lesson. Well, today's lesson is going to be about distributive property in Unit 2 Polynomials. Okay, so in this lesson, we will distribute a term to all the terms inside the bracket, which is a definition for distributive property. And you guys should not forget your exponent rules, like x to the power 1 times x to the power 2 equals x to the power 3. Because when you have two terms with the same base multiplied by each other, you just add the exponents. Okay, 1 plus 2 is 3. Okay, alright, so let's try an example. This is a done example for you guys. So we have negative 3h brackets 4 plus h squared. When in math, we see something, a term or something next to something which are separated by brackets, that just indicates multiplication. Okay, alright, so what this translates into is essentially 3h multiplied by 4 plus h squared. Alright, what distributive property states is that we will distribute the negative 3h to each of these individual terms inside the bracket, which are 4 and positive h squared. So negative 3h times 4 is negative 12h, and negative 3h times h squared is negative 3h cubed. Let's break it down further. Okay, so what this basically means, the distributive property, we distribute to each term, right? So negative 3h times 4 plus negative 3h times h squared. So that is what distributive property says. Okay, so when you're multiplying something like this, right, then you see, which sort of thing do they have in common? Do they have the h in common, or do they have just the numbers in common? In this case, they have the numbers in common, the coefficients, which are negative 3 and 4. Okay, so we can bring the h down because there's nothing to do with the h, and we can just deal with the negative 3 and 4. So negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. Okay, negative 12h. Okay, the next bracket, we have negative 3h times h squared. Now we see that what is common among the terms? The h's, right? So we just ignore the negative 3. We can just bring the negative 3 down here. Okay, so now we just deal with h times h squared. If you remember your exponential rules, it will be h to the power 1 times h to the power 2. What does that mean? That means that 1 plus 2, 3. So h to the power 3 is your h. So you bring h to the power 3 down here. This is what you have, and you can simplify this. So if you guys learned last unit about integers, you guys might have remembered that when positive times a negative, it gives you a negative. Okay, good. Okay, so this is your final answer. Okay, this is more of a detailed breakdown, and this is more simple if you understand it quickly. Okay, let's do an example here. This longer example, same concept, we just distribute to each of these terms. Sorry, my arrows are kind of messy. Okay, you distribute to each of these terms. The xy means just one xy, as I said in the past few videos. When you have a before a variable, you don't have anything, it's a 1. Okay, so here we see 1xy and 2x cubed. Which terms do we see in common? Well, we see x and x here, so we don't do anything. So we keep that, but we see that the y is in this side, but it's not here. So we just bring the y down. Now we have 1x times 2x squared. So that is just basically x times x times 2x squared. And as we learned from our exponent rules, 1 times 2 is 2, and 1 times x squared is x cubed. So this here will turn into 2x cubed y. Y you bring down earlier. Okay, so we finished this one. Now we want to xy. So xy times xy, this is a 1 here. So xy times xy, that is just x cubed y cubed. The y squared, I'm sorry. Because xy times xy just means x times x times y times y, right? And this you can say x cubed. Here say y cubed. Y squared, I'm sorry. Okay, so this is our expression so far. So our last term is 9y squared. 1xy times 9y squared. Which sort of thing do we not see in common here? Well, we see that x is not in common, so we can bring down the x. Okay, we can bring down the x. Right. Okay, now we're left with y, or 1y times y squared. Using our exponent rules, we can say that y to the power 1 times y to the power 2 is y to the power 3. So we bring that y to the power 3 down. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot the 9. So y to the power 3 and 1 times 9 is 9. So that gives you 9xy cubed. Okay, so this would be your final answer, okay, for this question. Alright, next, now when you see something with many brackets, you want to work inside out. That is my tip. So you walk from the you go from the negative 2x times x minus y outwards. Okay, you sort of break the brackets from inside out. Okay, and we try to simplify the expression as much as possible. So let's start with this first one. 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times negative 2 y be negative 4xy. Bring the x down, and we're left with 2 times. We're left with 2 times negative 2y. That became negative 4y. Okay. All right. So we got that done. Minus 3 brackets 3. Now we evaluate this one. Okay. So what is that? Negative 2x times x. Negative 2x times x. That will be negative 2x squared. Okay. Negative x. Negative 2x to the power 1 times x to the power of 1. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. You just multiply the coefficients, then 1 plus 1 is 2. Okay? Alright. So you got rid of that bracket. We got rid of this whole bracket here. Okay? So now we're left with this. We continue simplifying this bracket. Negative 3 times 3 is 9. Negative 9, right? You can put the negative here, or you can just, you can treat this as the whole, or you can just bring the negative here, and you're left with 3 times 3. Okay? Either way works, it doesn't really matter. You can do negative 3 times 3, or you can put the negative out, and then you have 3 times 3. Doesn't matter. Still same answer. And then now, negative 3 times negative 2x squared. You see that the x squared doesn't is on its own. So we can put the x squared, put here, and we can move it down, and then negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6. Right? So we can have positive 6. Okay. So this is what we have so far. Okay. If you don't know how I did that, it's essentially just negative 3 times negative 2 squared, right? You can bring the x squared down, so you have negative 3 times negative 2, which is positive 6. Okay, this is how I got that. Okay, alright. So now you can group these terms because they're the same, they're like terms. As you can remember from the last lesson, they're like terms. So let's collect them. 2x squared plus 6x squared is what? 8x squared. Then you copy these terms below. And that will be our final answer.